Hi everyone, it's Dawn from Crafting on the Green. I hope you're all well and enjoying the heat wave, not suffering too much. So I've been playing with a few new sets today, and I wanted to show you how I made this gorgeous goat card. He's, as you can see, I've hidden him in a gate. Added a few flowers, and I've used a stacked stone background to make it look like he's in a garden gateway, which strangely enough is the name of the die, the garden gateway dies. So I want to show you how I put this together. There's quite a lot that you'd be able to do with this by adding lots more flowers. It doesn't have to be a goat, you know, you can go quite crazy. It's a wonderful die set to have, the garden gateway dies. So first of all, I started by using the stacked stone die stamp. So I did this for the background, and to do that I used the Stamparatus. I would recommend using the Stamparatus when you're using such a big stamp. Although you can get a big block, it's a lot easier to manipulate, and if it doesn't quite stamp the first time, you can restamp it and it stays in the same place. So for the background I used Sahara sand. I didn't want it to be too dark or too light, so I need a piece of card already cut to size, and I'm just going to place it in there. Now normally I would use these magnets to stick the card in place, however it won't quite work with the size of this stamp, so we will trust that it will just stay where it wants to be. So ink up the stamp. It is a very, very big stamp. It's wonderful. And then we push it over and give it a good push, especially down this side, because it might not make contact quite as much as it would on this side. So we give it a good push. And when we pick up, you'll be able to see there's some bits missing, but that's okay because we can just pop it straight back down and give it another push. The joys of the Stamparatus. Sometimes it takes a couple of attempts. But there we go, I think we've got that. So there's the background. With the Stamparatus, you would normally, you do get a foam mat that would also go in it, but you don't use that if you've got a rubber foam stamp. You only use it for the photopolymers. So we'll use that, and then I'm going to take my chamois just to give it a quick clean. So nice squeaky clean surface. There we go. So that's our background. Pop that away. So next we want to cut a hole out of it using the Grace's Garden dies. I have already pre-cut one just because my die cutter is very noisy. So these are the dies that you can get in the set, including this one that we will also use in a moment. So to cut the background I just used that. And then next we're going to cut out in white using this die here to make the gate. But again, because of my noisy machine, I've cut one out already. So when it comes, it's still joined together. So take some snips, and you just want to cut along the centre line. There we go, just like that. So as you can see, it's now a gate. And I'm going to add a bit of glue. My glue's been coming out quite fast today because it is, well, it's 31 degrees outside. So I would recommend, if you're going to be doing any gluing where you have to be quite precise, just check the glue's not flowing really quickly, so especially in this weather. So then what we do, if you can still see, we'll line it up on each side. There we go. and we'll give that just a moment to set. It doesn't quite fit exactly in there, so you'll see there is a slight overlap if you turn it over, but that's fine because we're going to be covering that anyway. So what we're going to do is stick that onto another white background. So I'll get the Tombow again. I am getting glue everywhere, right over the middle, which is always helpful. Now when you stick the back on, or stick this onto the back, you don't want to put any glue on the gates. You just want to put it on the back. Okay, I'll try and line that one up. I think that's, there we go, it's quite well lined up. So there we go, and if you do have any bits of glue or residue, you can take a glue eraser and just run it down the side. I think my residue is left from when I taped it into position going through the die cutter. Right, so next we want to add some flowers. So I've used the Grace's Garden stamp set for this, and I've just picked out a few of the flowers. So I've gone for 2 of them in the background, and a couple in the foreground, although you can't really see much in the background, but it's there. It is there. So we want some scrap white paper, of which I have a big folder full. I thought I had some out, but obviously not. So it's always a good idea to keep a big folder full of all your scrap white bits, because they will always come in handy for things like this. So I'll pop that to one side a second. So I want to take the small flower and the memento and just give this, we just want a couple of those, we just want one for each side, and we're going to cut those out in a moment. And then for inside, fold open the gate, and then I want to add, first of all I'm going to add this one, slightly stubbier one. I didn't have any other correct size blocks left, so I'm using quite a large one. I'm going to pop that just about there, and then I cut a mask out of a post-it note. So to do that, you just stamp onto a post-it note and then just cut off the bit that you're going to need it to be masked off, so that you can stamp and it will look like it's behind it. So all I needed was this corner here, really. I realised that after I'd already cut the other side. So you pop that on top, then you take your other stamps. We're going to go for the taller one, and then we're just going to pop that over here, and then if it does overlap, which it will slightly, it's not going to get messy in the middle. So we'll take that back off. There you go, you see, so it's not overlapping itself on the actual stamp. Right, so we want to add a bit of colour. I'm going to go for some Rococo Rose this time round. Whereas on here I used a mixture of rich raspberry, there's some Rococo Rose, Misty Moonlight, various greens, and I used an old olive background, but this time I want to use a Rococo Rose background. So I am going to use a bit more pink on my flowers this time. So that's dark Rococo Rose, and that's light Rococo Rose. So with the flowers on the background, because quite a lot of it is going to be covered by the goat, you don't need to worry too much about being particularly neat, especially when you get to the middle. In fact, you could probably miss out half the middle and it wouldn't make much of a difference. Alright, I'm going to do that about there. I'm going to switch to the light one for this side. So I think this bit's going to be covered up by the goat, but I'll colour it anyway. I always think you never know who's going to try and look underneath the card and what's been stuck on, so I always try and like to actually have it done fully. And we'll pop these as pink as well. There we go. Right, and then for the leaves I went for dark granny apple green, nice and bright. Okay, there we go. Oops, missed a background. And then for the grass I used dark old olive. I love old olive, it's a wonderful green colour. And because it's all kind of sketched, you don't really need to worry too much about being neat again, you just want to add a bit of colour on there. And I'm going to do the same for these ones as well. I'm just colouring the grass. And then I'm going to use a light Rococo rose for the flowers. There we go. So next we want to fussy cut. We're going to chop these ones out. If you don't like fussy cutting, there are dies that match this in the die set. There are for each of the flowers. You've got a little one there, and you've got the bigger ones as well, should you want to cut out any of the bigger flowers. But sometimes I find if you're just cutting something small out, it's just as quick to do a bit of fussy cutting. And the idea with fussy cutting is it doesn't have to be exact or neat. It's just a quick way to cut it out. So I think by the time I had the die lined up, I have it done. However, if I'm doing lots of die cutting, if I'm doing lots of the flowers, then I will run them all through on one sheet at once, because then it does work out a lot quicker. Right. And if you don't have a pair of snips, I highly recommend getting some, because they are fantastic for fussy cutting. Right, okay, so now we've got our flowers. I'm going to add those on shortly. What I want to do next is sort out the goat. So with the Way to Goat stamp set, you get 3 different types of goats. You've got one eating the flowers, which I think is really good when you've got a flowery background. You've got one that's dancing. At least I think he's dancing. Looks a bit like a Thriller. And then you've got I don't know. I don't know how to describe him. He doesn't quite look moody. He looks a bit, I don't know, like he's up to something. So you've got the 3 different goats. So I'm going to go again with the one with the flower. Again, because I've got the flowers, I think it does look like he's quite happily chomping through the garden. So again, I'm going to use Memento, and we shall make sure he's got lots of ink. Pop him on there. I'm also going to use the little tin can. I think it gives quite a cute little effect to just add it onto the card as well. So for this, to colour him, I used, what did I use? Light crumb cake and dark crumb cake. And for the tin can, I used dark grey granite. So I don't want to colour the goat in entirely. I'm just going to do wisps around him just to give a bit of definition. 'Cause I quite like white goats, so I'm going with white. He needs a bit of shading. So I kind of follow the bits on the stamp where they've got his fluff, and an extra bit for the shading. go, something like that, I think. So you can see I've just given him a little bit of definition there. I didn't use the dark crumb cake on him actually. I used, when I was playing, on the other goat. Let me show you. This is what I was working on earlier when I was having a play. So on the slightly moodier looking goat I used dark crumb cake for his legs, but on the other ones I didn't, as you can see. So dark grey granite for the tin can. I guess you could use any colour, but I just think an old tin can is just destined to be grey. Right, lots of blends being used today. So again, light Rococo Rose for the flower, nice and bright, and then a bit more fussy cutting. There aren't any dies for the Way to Goat set, so if you do want them to be 3D, you're going to need to cut them out. Ooh. There we go. My cat has just decided to wake up, jump out of the box, and then bless her heart, she's flopped on the floor. I do think it's a little bit warm for them today. I know it certainly is for me. So as you can see, I'm not really getting overly close, and I'm not being overly worried about the detail, or you know, being too perfect with it. Just trying to roughly follow the lines around the outside. But I will take a bit out of the middle for his feet. There we go. And just the tin can. It's a bit more fiddly when you're doing the small things, isn't it? Right, there we go. Let's get rid of this scrap. Okay, so now we can start putting these bits on. So the goat I want to be on dimensionals, so take a couple of those. And we'll pop him in the middle somewhere. So you see how the flowers get covered up quite a bit. But just in case people like to try and look inside, then at least it has colour all the way through. And the gate auto closes. What I want to do is add a tiny bit of glue onto his feet. So I have a very tatty little glue dabber here. And I'm just going to touch it along the bottom there. Then we'll hold it a second so that it can just take, and there we go. Alright, okay, so with the tin can, we'll use a mini dimensional, and I will use my tweezers for these because they're a bit smaller. Pop it straight in the middle. When you're doing something small like this, you can also work away at the edging of the dimensionals and chop into it. It's quite handy if you've got something long and thin that you need to try and stick down. Oh, I don't want that just yet. I want to stick the flowers down first. Silly me. So, pop a bit of glue on the back of the flowers. Try not to throw them across the room like I normally do. Now, the handy thing is on the gate there's a little nook right at the very bottom that you can just tuck the flowers under. and it doesn't matter too much if it's overhanging slightly, because we are going to put the other background on as well. And then again the same on the other side. There we go. Right, now we can add the tin can. So I think last time I popped it on the right, so this time I'm going to pop it on the left. Let's pop it about there. There we go. Right, so now we want the wording. Some of the wording in this is brilliant. So you've got happy birthday you old goat, you're the goat, greatest of all time. I love this one, I got you a cake but I ate it. And then wait a goat, which is just very bizarre, but I love it. So I'm going to go with you're the goat, greatest of all time. Again, now using a scrap, see, it's brilliant to keep all these offcuts because that's just actually the perfect size for this. So we use Memento again. We'll just pop that on there. See, absolutely perfect size for it. So it saves cutting into a whole new piece of paper just to get your wording on there. But you'll find so many times that they just fit perfectly. Right, so out comes the trimmer. You could just use scissors if you're brave enough, but I always get it wonky. So I'll just use the trimmer. Okay, so again I'm going to use dimensionals. Pop a couple on there. And roughly in the centre, there we go. So that's enough for the dimensionals. So now we want to add our background, the next layer. So careful not to bend them. Pop some more glue on the back of that. There we go. And then we want one more layer, which is the card. So again, we shall pop some glue on the back. Sorry, I'm slightly off camera here, I know. Trying not to get everything covered in glue. Certainly a messy one for me, this. Right, and then we'll pop that on there. And give it a good push down. And then I'm going to finish with my personalised stamp on the back. There we go. So there we have it. Fold that one. Take the bone folder to make sure I get it done properly. And that's how I made the card. So as you see now, I've got an old olive and a rococo rose, and I think they both work absolutely perfectly. I love the background and the dies and the goat, some of my favourite items to use. But I hope you found this useful. If you have any comments or ideas, or if you'd like to see me use a particular set and try and make something, please do get in touch. My website is www.craftingonthegreen.co.uk. And my email address is dawn@craftingonthegreen.co.uk. So please feel free to get in touch. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you will join me again for the next one. Bye bye.